Hi, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
My name is Jade,
And I'm Sheree.
and we are together your favorite mother-daughter private investigation duo.
And welcome to another episode of Pretty Guilty.
Back again.
We,
I can tell you we tried to redo this intro, and it's been an adventure.
yes, but we
made it.
didn't. We did it.
We
Second
made
time
it.
tonight.
Proud of us.
Because we're recording 3 podcasts actually at a time because we have so many different trials to cover.
And we're bringing you the action. We're dedicated.
We are. We have our little producer over there.
Yeah, it's the cat.
2 cats. Miss Piggy and Dally. So on this podcast, we are actually going to do a little recap on Karen Reed from the week. Very short week this week, only 3 days.
Small but mighty is what they say, truly.
It was
because this is
so
one,
good.
But I feel like I say this every week that we recap this podcast. I say, oh, so-and-so on the stand has got to be my favorite witness. My favorite part of it.
Then like another one gets on the stand.
Another one gets on the stand. First it was Jen McCabe, and I thought this is peak trial. And then Sergeant Buchanan, peak trial. To be honest, that's still probably my favorite.
I mean, probably the most, it was the
Dictionary for me.
It was the cross-examination between Alan Jackson and Buchanan,
Yes.
regardless of whose side you're on. If you support Karen Reed being guilty,
Cinematic.
if you support her being innocent, it really was quite the back and forth that you could not turn. You just couldn't turn away from it. You couldn't stop watching.
I was literally on my way to work, and I had the cross-examination playing on the speakers of my car, just listening to it. And that's the point where he's like, can I get a dictionary? Because I don't know the word theory. And I call my mom, and I'm like, are you listening to this right now? I mean, you couldn't help. It didn't matter literally what you were doing when you were listening to that cross-examination. You were glued to it.
I will never forget because I was listening to it too. I was in the kitchen making coffee.
You knew where you were when you heard the
Yes,
dictionary
yes,
line. Truly,
yeah.
you'll never forget that moment. So,
which is so bizarre that like stuff like that really sticks in your head, but it was such just a back and forth. I guess it was the moment of, are you serious?
Like, you have got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And it's not, first of all, I'm not going to give any credit to Sergeant Buchanan for being an icon and being a legend, because that has nothing to do with him. It is absolutely Alan Jackson being the icon of this entire, I mean, when he said,
Right.
do you know when you drag a body and you get grass stains or whatever? He asked Sergeant Buchanan, and he said, well, I've never dragged a body through the grass, so I wouldn't know. Well, you've never done homicide, but here you are. You're a homicide detective. Obviously, that was just my quick way of saying it. But stuff like that, the one-liners.
Right. Yeah.
An icon. And he's so quick with it, and I respect that.
No, honestly, it's so true. What was interesting is watching Alan Jackson thinking that on cross he's really good, and then Alessi gets up. And
They're good in their different ways, but they're
Right.
both incredible at what they do.
Right. Alessi is a very brilliant attorney.
So
He's
smart.
very intelligent. He's obviously so experienced as well. The way he did cross-examination this week, especially with witness Shannon Burgess, I was driving in the vehicle with your dad, and we were driving down the road as we're watching this, and I kept saying to Dad, does he not understand he's being set up? Like, can he not see this coming?
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness. So I guess we should just start with Shannon.
So with Shannon Burgess, how did we get here? How did he end up on the stand? Because I feel like that's a big proponent of the massacre that happened in court this week.
I think you're actually right. So it all just started last week when the prosecution brought up the fact of Shannon Burgess having the time difference between John O'Keefe's iPhone and the clock on Karen Reed's SUV. There was a 20 and 30 second delay. However, he was saying that in his findings, even with that delay, they really meant that they were done at the same time, meaning the clicking of the right button of his phone turned off at the same time that he was hit by the car with Karen Reed. So he's trying to show that he was a hit and the phone turned off all at the same time instead of the delay, which is very important with the timeline.
Yeah.
They sprung this on the defense. The defense was mad because his amended report came out on May 8th, which is after the trial started.
Yeah.
So the defense, of course, argued and said, we don't want him. We want to at least voir dire him. The judge said, no, you don't need to voir dire him. I'm just going to let him get on the stand. I'm going to give you a lot of leeway with him. And the defense clearly was upset about it. I would be, because it was an ambush for sure.
Well, it was an ambush. The judge said, Judge Bev, she said, I'm going to think about it. No. So she said no. And then she said, I'll give you guys some leeway, though. When you guys are in cross-examination, I won't object as much. Fast forward, she did not uphold that, but the defense was really upset because they had the report and didn't turn it over in time. They ambushed the defense. The judge essentially piggybacked off of that, and this is called karma.
Right. Absolutely. Because the problem is, and I know we talked about this in the prior podcast, I won't go into too much detail, but the problem is the defense said, we have strategized and presented our defense off of this particular timeline, and now you guys want to change it because it's a last ditch effort. Their case is crumbling.
It is so bad.
Not even just crumbling. It's like a bomb went off and just exploded.
And his name was Shannon Burgess. That's the bomb that went off.
I think it was Hank Brennan first, and then Shannon Burgess. I mean, it's a mess.
I saw someone on Twitter literally say this is going to go down in the history as one of the worst testimonies in the history of court and law and trials. I mean, it is so bad. Shannon Burgess's testimony is
that, and I think the prosecution's case is probably one of the worst too, as well. I did see today, interestingly, somebody talking, a couple legal experts talking about how they thought Hank Brennan knew that they were going to lose, and essentially now is just trying to ensure that she gets a not guilty, because if it's a hung jury, he has the decision of, are we going to retry this? Never in my wildest dreams do I think that they are going to retry this if there were another hung jury.
I think they would.
Oh, no, not at all.
I think they would try.
You imagine Jen McCabe being called like the fifth time.
No, I saw someone, I don't remember what it was or who it was, but I remember someone said, like, we will take this until she gets guilty or not guilty. Like, if they do a mistrial, we are ready to file charges. But also that was before trial number 2 happened. So it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. After the massacre that is this entire case, there's no coming back from this. There's no coming back from this.
Yes.
Never.
So his testimony started with the prosecution, of course, on direct. They questioned him about his background, sort of. They didn't go into his education, which was actually kind of interesting because any expert that testifies generally will go into extensive information about their background. And also any expert that does testify has to present to the court a CV, which is essentially their professional resume.
Yeah.
And it details everything about their background, which this was a very important component to where he ended up on cross with Alessi and where the
a huge
demise
mistake
of all of it went. It was a huge mistake.
Absolutely.
So Hank Brennan purposely did not, or I should say the prosecution, let's not name him specifically, but he's...
Yeah, well, the prosecution intentionally did not ask him about his education and background, did not go into depth about it at all.
Right.
Intentionally,
because I think they knew if they did, it brings down the credibility of the expert witness. And
that's an understatement.
Yeah, sometimes just at a loss for words. I'm like stuttering over here because sometimes I just don't know what to say on what they were thinking.
Truly.
So he was on direct for like a day, I think afternoon, and then the morning, and then we got the cross from Alessi.
And then we got the cross from sassy Alessi. Truly, a sassy man. And that is the beginning of the end of A, this case, and B, this witness.
So let's take his cross-examination, kind of dissect it a little bit. Where do you think it started to fall apart?
Well, I think he knew when it fell apart, and it was when his face turned the color of these pajamas. Truly. I mean, you could tell that he was... Well, so Alessi was setting him up, right? Alessi was asking him questions. They were an absolute setup. And I think that Alessi caught him off guard with his line of questioning. And you could tell that that witness was struggling up on that stand. That is for sure.
Right. I think when he's going over all of these diagrams that were presented on direct, and it was the timeline of every single thing that he had, researched and talked about in his report about. So he tried to do like a baseline of the time of Karen's SUV. So he used like her 3-point turn to get like, that's the baseline of the clock that we're going to go by. And then how he came upon the iPhone clock too. And then he used that to move forward. So he did everything that the car did up into even when they picked up her SUV at her parents' home and took it to the Canton Police Department, like when it turned off, when it turned off to get onto the tow truck, etc. Right. And so then Alessi starts showing these diagrams to him. And this is the part where I told your dad, he's being set up and he doesn't even, like, he doesn't see it coming because Alessi's saying, is this right down? You've pinpointed this right
down to the second.
Down. But he would like do it like drawn out. He's like, right down to the second. And I thought, oh no, he set him up and he didn't even see it coming. Yeah. And he did that 5 times in a row, right down to the second.
Yeah.
And he said, yep, with confidence.
Loud and wrong. That's what we call it.
Loud and wrong.
Loud
yes,
and
I
wrong.
like that, loud and wrong. I'm going to use that in life.
But people who just really say, yeah, that's the truth. Yeah. I did, down to the second.
Yeah.
Loud and wrong.
You're loud and wrong.
So loud, so wrong.
I like that.
Yeah, that's what Shannon Burgess was. Loud and wrong. Mind you, I do want to say also on a sidebar, the defense had no time to prep for this witness.
Right.
So the fact that this was really the demise of this witness and case, truly, I mean, there's more factors, but this was such a bomb. The fact that this happened with no preparation, mind you, both the prosecution and Judge Bev were hoping that they would not be able to have enough time to do anything with this witness, let alone all of this. So I just do want to say on a sidebar that this is why it's partly so impressive that this happened.
Oh, no. You know how many people they had digging? Every paralegal assistant, homeless person.
Everybody in Massachusetts, every mom and pop that's in the backyard was doing whatever they could.
Super quick, back to the timeline. That's when they first caught him on a mess up because he had the date wrong. And it was like Alessi yelling in court at him, like, as a matter of fact, he's going for him and just like yelling at him in court and telling him, you got the wrong date. And at one point, the blank stare on his face when he realized that he had messed up.
Yeah.
What did you think when you saw that?
Oh, man, this is just the beginning because I was thinking, is they are about to go in. I mean, especially Alessi, I feel like is a lot more even kill than Alan Jackson. So
Very
the
much
fact
so.
that Alessi is yelling at this man in court.
Yeah. I feel like he's a little bit more methodical.
Absolutely.
He, at one point, Shannon was just sitting there staring into blank space. And he said, well, it was the date that I did was the date of the incident.
Whenever that was.
Which would be
1995, it could have been, I don't know, but it was on the date that are you thinking it? Because that's what I'm thinking.
It was kind of, he was like, yeah, like what you said. It's kind of, he's trying to dig the hole out at that point. And it was over after that. I'm sure he lost all thought process and just.
The panic must have set in with this man. Because he's up against a very tough legal team, truly.
Yeah.
So he's realizing very quickly that this is going downhill. And I think one of the biggest parts of his testimony, if not the biggest part of his testimony that was I just keep using the word massacre and bomb because what else do you describe it? But he lied about his background. It's so bad.
Yeah. It was his bachelor's degree.
He lies about his background. He lies about his education.
Right. When the problem is he was saying, well, I've been trying to get my bachelor's degree
for 17 years.
For 17 years. He said, but life and work, and I can understand that. Life and work gets in the way. But at the same time, at what point do you just not say that you have your bachelor's degree? So in that 72 hours that the defense had to go and research his background, they went to his LinkedIn. On his LinkedIn, he says he has a bachelor's degree. He has 2 separate CVs. So the LinkedIn showed that he has his bachelor's degree. He had 2, I thought 3 CVs, but I remember I thought there was 3, but at least 2. One shows that his degree is pending, and one shows that he has his degree. And so that was a question, like, well, why do you have 2 CVs? One saying that you have your degree when you don't. You have a LinkedIn that says that you have your degree. So then Alessi asked him, do you know when someone goes onto your LinkedIn, does it alert you that somebody has viewed it? And he said, it doesn't necessarily give an alert, but it lets me know who viewed it and lets me know that it was viewed. And he says, in the last 72 hours, were you made aware that somebody from the defense team was looking at your LinkedIn? And he said, no.
I didn't know that.
But then what happened to his LinkedIn account?
Disappeared.
Yes.
He completely took it down, deleted, finito, gone, out of here. He took down his LinkedIn profile after the defense was looking at it, and now it's nowhere to be found.
Right. So there was some conversation during cross about, or I think it was actually redirect, where he was asked more in regard to that, where he did say the CV that he submitted did not have his degree on it. Mm-hmm. But then Alessi comes back and was like, oh, we did even more digging because, certainly Shannon Burgess thought it stopped there. Alessi said, have you ever testified or have you ever been part of a case where your education has been questioned? And he said, no. And then he's like, well, there's this federal case in Texas where you did submit a CV that said that you did have your bachelor's degree. So now you're submitting false information to the court in Texas on a federal case. He said, well, I didn't do that.
Do you understand how bad this is? Because now that person in that trial, if they were found guilty, they can go on appeal now. One of the expert witnesses is essentially lying about his credentials.
Right, exactly. Oh, and Aperture, the company he works for. So he said on that federal case that Aperture submitted it on his behalf. Where do you think Aperture got it from? Yeah. Aperture doesn't have someone lady in the back just like, we're just going to make up resumes here and like typing them out. Then also on Aperture, they had him listed that he had a bachelor's on their website. So there were 2 links gone like days before this happened. And so do you think that he knew that Aperture had that on their website?
I think that if he didn't, Aperture did. I think that probably the prosecution was probably putting all their P's and Q's together. Mind you, this is why Direct did not question him about his background, because they were hoping that the defense did not pick up on it and nobody
that they wouldn't have had time, anything. Right?
The fact that they found that case that he did in Texas where there was a CV submitted, they had time to find that case. And I just know the person on the other end of that case is sitting there thinking, I want to file an appeal. Yeah, I mean, truly. Big mess up. But I think that Aperture knew they made a mistake. They were probably contacted by the prosecution. If they weren't contacted by the prosecution, Aperture for sure knew that they made a mistake. They took it down. And I think the prosecution knew. I think they were hoping that the defense, A, didn't have time to figure this out, and B, would just not bring it up. And so that's why they didn't question him about his background, hoping, don't see it. Nobody sees it.
Listen, never underestimate a team like that you're going to ambush them. The judge is not going to let you voir dire the witness. And as investigators ourselves, conducting backgrounds, I mean, listen, we can get a lot of information in a short amount of time. Mm-hmm. And especially if it's a rush case and you need this, I mean, we'll stay up hours and hours and hours and hours to find every single thing that we can.
And I hate to say it, but when you're looking for information on someone, the first place people look is your LinkedIn.
Right.
Your Indeed account or your LinkedIn account. And that's probably, I mean, because if you just Google him, the first things that are going to pop up are a Facebook, Aperture's website, LinkedIn, any type of website that you have that's public for any type of credentials that you have is going to pop up. It's not hard to find. It's just a quick Google search.
But I did see some people asking like, well, how did the defense know that if he listed his bachelor's degree on LinkedIn, then how did they know that it actually wasn't true? Because they had to go and research that. Mm-hmm. Anytime you call a college, a university, they will release that information. It's public information.
It's just a quick
so they
phone
went, hello, ring, ring.
This isn't like some type of high profile sealed case. I mean, it's a bachelor's degree and they just need confirmation,
right?
That absolutely. Either he has it or he doesn't. And I mean, when you get a job and your job says, okay, well, we're going to have to go ahead and verify that everything, that you told us is truthful. That job calls up that school and says, hey, do they have this? For sure. Okay, cool. So it's not sensitive information that wouldn't be not easily accessed.
It really made the prosecution look terrible. It made the witness look they're not an expert at this point, because if all of their credentials of what you're trying to
I could
purport.
go up there and testify on the stand. I have more credentials than he
But
does.
that's what the prosecution said. They said Steve Jobs doesn't have a degree. Steve Jobs doesn't testify as an expert on the stand in cases. Well, we cannot compare the two.
I mean, that's
honestly.
quite literally like me
Right.
going out to that crime scene, taking a look, being like, yeah, this is my
Yeah.
opinion. I mean, and it's not to say that he doesn't have experience, and it's not to say that he's not qualified to speak about it, I guess. But if you're going to say
Yes.
that you have all of these things and present yourself as an expert witness, and then those are lies, at the very least, it shows the jury that you're not a credible witness. Because if you're willing to lie about something like that, what else are you willing to lie
Right.
about? And then it's not just one lie. It's the what time is the date that you did the report. It's the lies on your background. There's so many different small things. And again, all the jury needs is a reasonable doubt. That's a reasonable doubt.
Well, yes, when they're providing an inept, at this point, expert witness. I agree with you. It doesn't mean that he doesn't necessarily know his job, but when you're going to go testify on the stand about something of that nature, you're going to have a CV, you're going to present yourself as having a bachelor's degree to boost your credibility. It really doesn't, it's not a good look. So I think the defense did a good job in dismounting his credibility. It'll be interesting how the jurors take this. And if Judge Bev would have just let them voir dire this witness, all of this could have been avoided.
Well, there are multiple things. A, you don't bombard a legal team of this stature. You don't, I mean, this is the problem when you act in corruption. I mean, it looks corrupt the way that they went about this. It looks corrupt. So then they do all of this. Not only was the prosecution's case flimsy at best,
Yes.
this did not help in any way, shape, or form. This has got to be, I mean, not hysterical like hee hee ha ha, but this is hysterical. I mean, in the sense of this case is never, and this is just my opinion. If the jury were to come out and find Karen Reed guilty, the jury is being bought, because there's no person in the history of the
No,
world
at
that
this
would say
point.
without a shadow of a doubt that there are how many jurors? 18?
Yes.
18 people would all agree that Karen Reed is guilty.
Right.
There are people that can say they think that she's guilty, but 18 individuals seeing this case
To
play
collectively,
out, to collectively
agree as a
all
whole.
agree.
Yeah.
You can convince me.
It really feels like the prosecution did this and took on that adage of it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. But you can't ask for forgiveness when you put an expert on the stand and they're like hugely discredited. And on the flip side, then we had other testimony this week too that actually it didn't discredit any witnesses, but again, it just shows how we have holes in the case of the prosecution too as
Absolutely.
well. We'll leave Shannon alone.
So the next witness we have is Christina Hanley. She is the state's crime lab expert. And she testified on what day?
She testified, actually, there was 2 days she got on the stand. I think
Yeah.
it was Tuesday afternoon and then Wednesday.
Yeah. Because there was, you know what happened this week that we didn't talk about?
Go ahead.
The jury.
Yes.
The jury. So we come into court yesterday, and I'm on jury duty. So we come into court, and Judge Bev stands up and says that she needs to speak with each juror individually, one-on-one. They clear the courtroom out so quickly. The media inside didn't even have time to grab their jackets. They got cleared out so quickly. And the only people that were allowed were counsel, Karen Reed, the judge, and then one juror at a time. The other jurors had to wait in the deliberation room. And why do you think that this happened?
Well, somehow I believe that they caught wind, the judge did, that something was going on with one of the jurors. I think it probably was there a concern that they saw something on the case? Did they hear something? Were they talking to each other as well? And so she has to essentially interview them each one-on-one at a time to find out what it is that they've either seen, heard, discussed, because the jurors aren't allowed to discuss the case with each other, even
With anybody.
with anybody, not even each other at this point, right?
Judge Bev, each day of trial, she tells the jurors, or she asks them, have you been exposed to anything? Have you been doing research? Have you heard anything about this case? It's essentially involuntary that you saw regarding any of the evidence or anything that anybody is saying. And so this happened. There's 18 jurors. So they were doing this for quite a bit of the day. It took quite some time. Karen Reed seemed optimistic after. Like everything seemed okay.
Yeah, it was fine. Everybody came back in.
All the jurors came back in. They did say that 2 of the jurors switched seats. I believe it was a man and a woman. But other than that, they seemed to...
Everything seemed to be fine. There's so much speculation of what happened, and we're not really ever going to know. All we know is that somehow there was a resolve done, knowing that they could continue the trial. A juror was not dismissed, which wasn't there a juror that was dismissed during the first trial?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yes.
Don't quote me on that, but I believe so.
I'm pretty positive that there was. So I'm sure they were worried about a repeat of this. But that's why they have 18 in case they need an alternate.
Yeah, the reason this sparked in my mind was because they started interviewing a witness, and then the next day we came back, and then the witness wasn't on the stand, and they kind of changed the order of the witnesses, which was really interesting when they did that. So that's why I randomly was like, wait, that.
Well, everybody, because it was, okay, what's going on? Something's going on. There was reference to somebody had put out some kind of information last week about there supposedly being a hot mic moment. We won't go into all that because that's kind of
speculation, but do your research. It's very interesting.
So people were like, oh, it has to do with that. And then they were analyzing every move that everybody made
like,
in the courtroom.
And then this person looked this way.
Yeah, and then Karen pointed that way.
And this person took a breath, and that person blinked.
Yeah, and this person's blocking John O'Keefe's brother from view. It was Yannetti. Yannetti's blocking John O'Keefe's brother.
From being Karen Reed. It was a whole thing.
It was a whole thing. So all this speculation that was going on what happened. When the jurors did come back in, she asked them the one question. She asked them one of the 3 questions and said that they've already been independently asked about the other 2. So so it was very interesting. But for now, everything is at peace.
Okay, so back to Christina Hanley. And sorry, I got distracted with the days and the things and the jury.
Squirrel.
No, true. I was just really excited to talk about that.
Yeah. So, Christina Hanley, she's from the State Crime Lab. So she tested the glass on the bumper of Karen Reed's SUV that was found in the Sally Port when it was parked in the Sally Port. Yeah. The cocktail glass that was found at 34 Fairview, and then also some glass that was located on the road. And then she tested debris from John O'Keefe's sweatshirt and T-shirt, right?
Mm-hmm. And what were the results of that?
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Very interesting. So the results were that the glass, except for one small piece on the bumper of Karen Reed's vehicle, did not match the cocktail glass. And that one small piece that matched the glass was found at 34 Fairview by who?
It was found by Michael Proctor.
Shocking.
The reality of it is really, truly, when you break it down, that every single piece of evidence that is not adding up or there's something behind it, it always has gone through Michael Proctor. Always. Every single piece of evidence. It's after 2 times. It's not a coincidence. And it's come on, And again, that's that reasonable doubt that the jury has to really try to understand and break down and decide what they think, because that is way more than a coincidence.
Right. She did find there was a taillight, pieces of taillight in his shirt and the sweatshirt. They were the size of about a piece of rice or smaller that were associated with remnants from, I guess, the taillight, similar to, Karen Reed's SUV. Yeah. So that was interesting. So that was kind of a point for the prosecution. I mean, the defense at this time of day, for the day alone, has like 30 points on their side. That was a point for the prosecution, because then you do wonder if there were taillights that small embedded in his sweatshirt and shirt, how did they get there? So that, gives you pause to say, well, how did that get there? We don't know. So her testimony was fine. She didn't lie that she worked for the Massachusetts State Crime Lab.
I would say she was an astronaut.
No lies. And then the only last witness, super quick, was that Dr. Isaac Wolf. I love how he came on the stand. He was like, I'm a brain surgeon. Yeah. So then it was basically pointed out on cross that the injuries on the back of his head, he had skull fracture, blunt force trauma, which is indicative of him falling backwards, hitting his head on solid ground, pavement, cement, ice, etc. But then on cross, what did they ask him?
Well, they said, so in your years of experience, how many patients have you done? And he said thousands and thousands of patients he's worked on and seen. And they said, in your thousands of patients that you've, operated on or seen with this exact type of injury, have any of those patients died in a 5-hour time span? And he said, not one of the patients that I've had in my thousands and thousands and thousands of patients in my 500 years of doing this has ever died within 5 hours of getting this exact brain injury.
Yes. And when Alessi questioned him on his experience, he said, you can ask it direct. I am not a pathologist. I'm a brain surgeon. But we did learn something very nice about Dr. Wolf. He wakes up at like 4:30, goes to the hospital, comes home.
6 a.m. he makes a cappuccino for his
His
wife
wife every day.
morning. And I'm trying to know, where do I get that type of treatment at 6 a.m.? Just kidding, I'm asleep.
Yes. So a lot more to come. Court was short this week, so it doesn't come back until next Tuesday.
Yeah.
A little break that I'm sure.
Probably all of them need.
Yes.
Truly, we all kind of need a little bit of resuscitation after Shannon Burgess. Court resumes on Tuesday through Friday, so we'll have to gear up. I am not losing hope that Brian Higgins and Michael Proctor are going to be on the stand. I know hope is like this big.
I think the defense will call them. My bet is the defense is going to call them you.
I hope so.
No, I totally think that they are.
I think they are too. And I'm so hopeful.
According to Karen Reed, outside of court, she had said they're probably going to have one more witness for the state side, and then they should be resting their case.
They should have already done it.
Yes,
they should have done it before Burgess.
Yes, yeah. So
Really
we'll see what happens next week, right?
Truly, we will keep you updated. We will be back in our jammies next week to give you the rundown. If Michael Proctor or Brian Higgins, it will be an emergency podcast episode. We will be here.
We will be
And
here.
You'll be here too.
Coffee, wine, anything.
Pajamas, sanity. I don't know. How long to get a bachelor's degree? Something like that. Thank you guys so much for watching the podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below if you think Michael Proctor, Brian Higgins are going to be up on the stand soon.
Yes.
I am so hopeful. Tune in next week to the Pretty Guilty podcast for all your favorite.
We'll be back again.
We will be back again.
We may even have cappuccino.
A cappuccino. How long does it make to cappuccino?
Yes.
Okay, I got to go to bed. Okay.
Bye.
Thanks guys. We'll see you later.